Hello, artists! Welcome back to another Art Life Conversations podcast with me, your host, Kelly Folsom. And for those of you who are new to me, I am a full-time artist. I am an art teacher, coach, mentor, author, all that good stuff. And my main passion and desire as an artist is to help other women artists really thrive and be abundant and be prolific and confident in every aspect of their art life. So if you are an artist who is seeking to have a more successful art life in any area, then I hope that this is of service to you. So today, what we're going to be talking about is how to be more productive in less time. Specifically, three things that are slowing down your progress, both in your art progress and in your art business progress. So this is something that I know I experienced as an aspiring, emerging artist, lessons that I had to learn along the way, and that I also witness in a lot of the artists that I work with, where they struggle as well. So I hope that this is going to be of massive value for you today. So there is, the number one thing is just taking too long to complete something, to complete either a painting or to complete a business task, perhaps that you have to complete, just taking too long, okay? So there is a really interesting law called Parkinson's law, which states that, let me read it so I make sure I don't get it wrong, work expands so as to fill the time available to its completion. Now, I know y'all have experienced this. We could just take perhaps a simple task, like maybe you want to reorganize your closet or redo your closet. And let's say, for example, if you don't set a time limit on that task or that to do, you might actually take all day to work on that and to get it done, versus if you said, I'm going to give myself 2 hours to clean out this closet, to reorganize it, and get everything where I want it to be. It's amazing. It is really amazing how this works, that you will be able to get the job done and get the task done in those 2 hours, the same way, in the same amount of time that maybe somebody else that didn't set a timeline for, perhaps maybe took all day to get it done. Okay. Now, again, there's nothing right or wrong about any of this, good or bad necessarily, but I don't know about you guys, but I know for me, I want to make the most of the time that I have, and I want to get as much accomplished as I can in the time that I have. And in fact, so many artists often ask me, like, how do you do all of this? Like, how do you do podcasts? How do you teach? How do you run an online art business? How do you paint? How do you then have time to paint? So for me, this principle, the Parkinson's law principle, is so fundamental to me getting more done in less time, and therefore, and while being efficient at it. It's not like we're being sloppy or anything like that. And therefore being more successful as an artist, right? And that is what we're aiming for. And this principle will be even more beneficial to you if you, for example, maybe you're working a full-time job or a part-time job, or maybe you're a full-time mom, stay-at-home mom. Basically you have less time for some reason. This will be even more powerful and more critical to your progress and development, because by default, you have less time, say, for example, than somebody who doesn't have all of those obligations, right? So this is really going to help you no matter, where you're at. Okay, so the number one thing is just taking too long to complete paintings or to complete task. Okay. Now, I inadvertently stumbled on this when I was in my 4th year of art school. What ended up happening was we had like a big end of year senior thesis exhibition coming up. I knew that I was going to be entering the real world, right, outside of art school. I knew that I needed to have high quality of paintings for sale, available for purchase and available for me at the time to enter exhibitions, juried competitions, and to submit to galleries. So, and at the time, I was really feeling like I was investing a ton of time into paintings, that at the end of the day, or the end of 3 days, for example, these paintings would just kind of drag on and on and on, it seemed like, and never quite get to completion and never quite get finished. And so I recognized, like, wow, I'm really investing so much time in these paintings only to, in the end, not be satisfied with the result, not be satisfied with the painting. So I came up with some experiments for myself, which really involved this Parkinson's law, which I had no idea about at the time. And that was just number one, just giving myself a time limit on something. And so I decided, like, it's not good for me to just not have any time limit whatsoever, and then I'm investing, anywhere from 10 hours to 30 hours into one painting. And this was back in 2010, whenever I was starting to come to these realizations, because the pressure was on, for me to try to make it as a full-time artist. I did not want to go and have to get a part-time job or a full-time job to pay the bills. I really wanted to come out of art school, fully having an inventory fully stocked of paintings, ready to sell, ready to show. So that's the first thing that I did, was I started setting time limits. Whether that, if I was painting a mini, maybe that was an hour time limit on, say, a little mini or a 5x7 or a study. And then larger paintings, maybe giving myself, hey, this painting has to be completed today. So giving myself specific time limits and shorter time limits, okay? And that basically leads right into that next problem, which is allowing too much time or not having any kind of specific time container whatsoever. Okay. So again, it's so critical for you, both for your painting development and your art business, that you set time constraints, time containers. Like, this will get done in this amount of time. Of course, in the corporate world, or even, at the education level, these might be called deadlines. And as human beings, we just function better when we do have specific times and specific dates for things, right? Like, whenever you go to college, for example, or to school, there are specific time limits for each class, right? And there's also a very specific routine. Then your papers are due at a certain time, your tests are taken at a certain time. Everything really does need to be time bound. And I know for artists, this can be a sticky point or a sticky topic, because a lot of us artists are more on that creative, spontaneous time, like time to wander, like time to explore, and that's totally fine. What I would say is, however, you need to actually have a specific amount of time for that sort of thing. Like, today, today is my day of spontaneity. Today I have 2 hours of just, or 1 hour, however long you need, of just like, allowing my mind to wander and to think creatively and to daydream or to come up with ideas. But again, if you don't have specific times and specific times that you're assigning specific tasks or completion dates to, then most likely you are just going to be taking way too much time. You're going to take all the time in the world. So if you don't have, for example, say each week, say I'm going to complete this number of paintings in this amount of painting time that I have, sectioned off in my schedule here, then what can end up happening is you end up working on maybe only one painting that week, for example. And maybe ideally you really wanted to get 3 paintings done, but you just took forever and ever and ever on that one painting, never really bringing it to completion, constantly changing it, overthinking it, taking too much time. And that can tie into the third issue here, which is basically just endless preparation. Now, I think this shows up for people, both artists, for both in their painting life as well as in their business life. I do end up seeing this a lot more on the business side for artists, and I know I experienced that as well. And some people are kind of more have more of that preparation side to them. I'm more of a quick start, so I tend to get started on things very, very quickly. But then if I don't set time limits, I can take too long to complete tasks or to actually finish something. So my challenge, especially in those early days, was actually finishing, and making more progress and being more efficient in a less amount of time. However, I have seen a lot of artists struggle with this endless preparation, like never really starting the thing, let alone setting a time for when they will start and when they will complete. And they get stuck in this place of like just endless preparation. I want to, let's say, for example, I want to redo my website, and they will spend months, weeks, days, just endlessly preparing, and a lot of times just preparing in their mind, or maybe doing endless research online, like, what are the best platforms, really trying to figure out all of the options and all the possibilities, and what ends up happening is they never take action, or that website that they have been endlessly preparing for, which could have taken them, less than a week to get accomplished if they really focused, and really got it done. Maybe it's drawn out to be a year. Maybe it's drawn out to be 6 months, 3 months, even a month. Like, something like that can, in today's time, can be super fast. You can actually get a website up and running in a matter of a couple of days. So there's really no reason to stretch it out. But I do find that there is just this problem of just not setting a time constraint, setting a deadline, setting a time container of this is how much time I'm going to give to this task, and that could be anywhere from, how much time are you going to give yourself to write an email, right? To send to your email list or your newsletter. You want to set a time constraint for that, right? Like maybe it's 1 hour, I hear often a complaint from artists like, it takes so long, and it really doesn't. It's just you are allowing yourself to take so long, right? So then, then what ends up happening is you start to believe like, it takes so long to write a newsletter or to compose a newsletter to send to my email list, right? But whenever you give yourself time constraints of, I'm going to do that task, the newsletter task, once a week, and I'm giving myself 1 hour once a week to get it done on this date. What ends up happening is your brain will go to work if you are really in integrity with your commitment there to completing that task in an hour's time or less. And that's usually what I say, 1 hour or less, for example, on this task. If you are really committed to that and you really believe yourself, you really are being honest with yourself and trust yourself that you are going to cut yourself off at that hour, like no matter where it's at, right? This is as good as it gets. What will happen is your brain starts to come up with more efficient ways of doing things, quicker ways of doing things, ways of basically making that time much more efficient, much more constructive, and making it to where, like, the next time, especially if it's a repetitive task, the next time you go to do that task again, you're going to set it up in the future so that it does take less time. Okay, now this ties into kind of, well, I guess there is four issues, so I'll just add this one on before we leave. But basically, not only endless preparation, but endless perfectionism, right? So really not accepting the nature or the state that something is in, and accepting the completion of it, even with its perhaps flaws or imperfections, if you want to call it those, right? Like sending that newsletter anyway, even if you're like, oh, there might have been a better way that I could have said that, or maybe it could have been laid out better. Maybe I could have stumbled upon, that magnificent subject line that was just going to get everybody to open it, all these kinds of things, right? So that kind of gets into endlessly perfecting that task until you feel like it is perfect. And in my mind, it's like nothing is ever perfect. There's always room for improvement, And so where I see the improvement coming in is in the consistency. So when you learn from each email that you send out, each subject line that you write, you learn from the feedback and from the results of those things, right? You don't get to do one perfect painting, one perfect email, and you've learned all there is to learn about that thing, and now you've got it down. Like, that's just not the way that it works. Okay. All right, artists, I hope that this has been helpful to you. Just to recap, be sure that you are setting a time limit, time constraint. Avoid those traps of endless preparation, endless perfectionism, and just assign a time, test it out, experiment with this. It's actually really fun when you start doing this. It's actually not an anxiety thing to do or anxious thing to do. Make it a game, make it fun. Like, how can I complete this painting in 2 hours, which used to take me 6 hours? How can I structure that painting time, that 2 hours, to really be focused? And actually, I find that too, like the shorter the time limit I have on something, the more focused and intentional I actually am in the moment. And so actually the work ends up being higher quality, rather than just, oh, okay, I've got all day to work on this, so I'm going to kind of, fiddle fart around and do endless preparation over here. And, oh, now I need a break, go have a cup of tea, those kinds of things, right? Like, no, focus, get your work done, do it with the highest quality you can possibly do it in that amount of time, accept the results. Then guess what? Then you get to go, relax and chill. And the added benefit is you get to feel great that you accomplish more in less time. And I'm telling you, there's nothing that's really more of a confidence booster than that. Okay, artists, I hope that this has been helpful and of service to you. As always, if you are here, be sure to let me know what you thought about this podcast, how it helped you, further questions or topics that you would like me to consider discussing. You can email those in at info@artlifewithkelly, Kelli, or comment below. Be sure that you like, subscribe, comment, share, all those good things. It really helps to get the word out, to more artists who are struggling in these kinds of areas in their art life. So, and also, if you are a woman artist that is looking to really level up your art life, level up your art business, be sure to go to artlifewithkelly.com, Kelli, so that you can check out and see what all I have coming up and available to you to serve you on an even deeper level. Okay, artists, wishing you all so much happiness, success, and creativity. Remember that your art does matter and makes a difference in this world, and we need your voice. We need your voice. We need your art. Okay, until next week, happy painting. Bye.